want to start, as always, by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the elders of Great Stone. Peace and citations and blessings to the Akim out there who are pushing this word for that sincerity, for truth, and the rest of the believers, men, women, children, shalom. Now, this lesson is gonna go into another mechanism, another device, another plot, being used by the so-called white man, the Edomites, the powers that be, you know, to forward their agenda. Right? And today we're gonna focus on global water scarcity and the resource paradigm from crisis to CBDC rationing. And this was a title actually generated by Gemini, and this image was also generated by Gemini based on the conversation that we're going to get into. So if you see what's going on right now in the world, you look at the news, water shortages, are being the trumpet is being blown for water shortages globally, and it's something that's coming up more and more in the news. We just saw I think it's Minnesota, water supply was hot. You know, so we know that these different things are happening in order to set up and to give more attention to and push a crisis, and that crisis is the global water shortage. And then the solution that they have, ready is to what we're going to get into is to tokenize natural resources, including water, and then tie that into the new digital ecosystem that they're building, right? So without further ado, let's get this article. And there's so many different articles that you can get on this topic, but I wanted to get this one from the UN, and this was published 20th of January this year. It says, world enters era of global water bankruptcy. UN scientists formally define new post-crisis reality for billions, right? So it says global water bankruptcy and living beyond our ideological means in the post-crisis era argues that the familiar terms water stressed and water crisis fail to reflect today's reality in many places. A post-crisis condition marked by irreversible losses of natural water capital and an inability to bounce back to historic baseline. The report tells an uncomfortable truth. Many regions are living beyond their hydrological means, and many critical water systems are already bankrupt, right? Expressed in financial terms, the report says many societies have not only overspent their annual renewal water income from rivers, soils, snowpack, they have depleted long-term savings in aquifers, glaciers, wetlands, and other natural reserves, right? So there are a lot of articles like this that you can find. There are a lot of news reports. Even here in Jamaica and Kingston, where we're having a water crisis because we've been in the community in pretty much in all of Kingston. There has been lockoffs going on for about 2 3 months now. You get water for like half the day, and then the next half the day you don't get water. Sometimes you don't get water for a couple of days. So everybody pretty much has to have storage tanks, water storage tanks, and and every day they send out like an update, to the level that the dams are at. You know, there are two major dams that serve the Kingston area. One of them, when the report started coming out, when before the dry period started, I think in about April, the capacity of one of them was 90 some percent, and the other one was at, I believe, 70 some percent. And now they are at 60 something percent and 40 something percent respectively. So there has been no significant rainfall, in about 2 to 3 months, so the dam levels are going down and down and down. And this is not just in Jamaica, this is globally, but I'm just bringing out, the local scenario. But This is being used, this crisis is being used to forward and to push a particular solution, right? And that particular solution is tokenized water, right? Or digitizing water rights and credits. So it says tokenized water involves converting water rights or water conservation credits into digital tokens on a blockchain. This process transforms water into a liquid, tradable, real world asset, enabling more efficient market allocation and transparent data verification. Water scarcity is rapidly becoming one of the most defining economic and environmental challenges of the 21st century. Often referred to as blue gold, water is essential for agriculture, industry, human survival, yet the markets governing its distribution remain surprisingly opaque and ineffective. As global demand outpaces supply, financial institutions and governments are looking towards blockchain technology, right, to modernize water management, right? So let's get the first precept. This is Isaiah chapter 10 and verse 1. It says, woe to them that decree unrighteous decrees and write grievousnesses which they have prescribed. Let's read that in the NLT. All right, so what it says. What sorrow awaits the unjust judges who issue unfair laws. And I wanted to look up the word prescribe, see if we can get something from that. All right, see if we can get something from prescribe. All right, kathab, kathab, to write, to record, to enroll, to inscribe, to engrave, to write on, right? So pretty much it just means written, right? But if you look up the word prescribe, right? Let's look up the word prescribe, right? And it says, so we're not talking about a medical practitioner, state authoritatively or as a rule that should be carried out, right? Here we go. Late Middle English in the sense confined within bounds, also a legal term meaning claim by prescription, direct in writing, from pre, which means before, and scribere, which means write. So that's what I wanted to highlight. That this is something that was prepared beforehand. This solution of tokenizing natural real world assets was something that was prepared beforehand, right? So verse 2 says, to turn aside the needy from judgment and take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey and that they may rob the fatherless. And as it talks about what taking away the right, this is saying that, tokenized water involves converting water rights. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna convert your right to water into a digital token on a blockchain, and that's gonna be issued, and connected to your digital ID, right, and tradable using your central bank digital currencies. So let's see how all of this links up. Let's see how all of this links up. Right. Let's go to the chat that I was talking to. Right, and let me just get that back up. No, no, let's get that back up. Right. So I just wanted to go through the summary, just not to not have brothers, and sisters read through too much, So what I do is I have an extensive conversation, and then I asked it to summarize the conversation so that we can have a more efficient lesson. Right. So it says comprehensive summary: the convergence of water scarcity, tokenization, and CBDCs. Right. So it says the drivers and mechanics of water tokenization, the crisis. Fresh water is increasingly threatened by over extraction, predominantly by agriculture, aging infrastructure, and climate variability. Tokenization. Physical water rights and allocations are converted into blockchain based digital tokens via smart contracts. This allows for fractionalization, transparent tracking, Internet of Things integration, and dynamic price discovery that incentivizes conservation, meaning you're giving up a particular allotment. And if you go over that allotment, the price can dynamically change. So let's say you're given an allotment of such and such amount of millions of gallons, right? And you pass that allotment. Within the allotment, let's say they charge you, $1 per gallon. If you go over the allotment, the price dynamically changes to $3 per gallon, right? To what? To incentivize conservation. The risk. Critics argue that this financialization transforms a fundamental human right into a speculative commodity, creating barriers for vulnerable population. And that's what they want to do. They don't care about your access to a fundamental human right. They care about data manipulation and also controlling the public, right? So it talks about now. Let me go back to it. All right, the integration with central bank digital currencies, the settlement layer. CBDCs provide the sovereign government-backed digital infrastructure to interface with the tokenized natural resources. Right, programmability. CBDCs enable automated compliance, conditional smart contract, real-time microtransactions, and targeted subsidies or penalties tied directly to resource usage, aka control your access to water and ration it digitally, right? They don't have to, the system is going to be so seamless, right? Or what they're planning is going to be so seamless that they don't have to police you because the system itself will police you with smart contracts, microtransactions, and targeted subsidies and penalties, right? If you waste water, you're going to be penalized and your access to it is going to be shut off, right? Digital rationing and civil liberties, behavioral control, linking CBD wallets to dynamic quotas, right? The amount that you're allotted, and Internet of Things meter shift resource management from physical restrictions like traditional hosepipe bans to algorithmic wallet level limits. So, say I'm in economic friction. This architecture risks pre-programmed inequality, and that's what's going to happen. Where wealthy entities can buy up the quotas while individuals face strict state monitors limitations on daily consumption and financial autonomy. That's what's going to happen, right? The wealthy elite are going to buy up all the rights to the water, and the citizens are going to get strict monitored limitations on their daily consumption using the blockchain technology and your CBDC wallet. Again, also with your digital ID, because that's what's gonna give you access to the system in the first place, right? And then I asked it to tie it into to let me delete that. Then I asked it to tie it into, the Hegelian dialectic and crisis-driven legislation, which we've brought out so many times, right? It says traditional decentralized public water management using standard fiat currency. That's the thesis, right? The antithesis, which is like the problem, severe panic inducing ecological collapses, prolonged drought, and day zero municipal failures. So what they're planning is to exacerbate or to worsen the situation to where it induces panic, right? Where you have no water, you're facing a prolonged drought, you're desperate. And then the synthesis, which is the solution, the implementation of tokenized resources and programmable CBDCs, framed as the only viable modern solution to save society. So there's something up here that I wanted to bring out. I liked how it quoted it. Here we go. All right, manufactured consent to emergency. It says when taps are running dry and cities are facing day zero scenarios, the psychological framing shifts from do you want government tracking and rationing, or, and it switches over to do you want water or do you want to die of thirst? Right? So, and then down here, so it says bypassing democratic friction. Emergency powers, executive orders, and fast track legislation allow complex financial architectures like real world, I think it's real world by what was RWB again? I think it's real world something. But yeah, it's talking about natural assets, tokenization, CBDC rails to be deployed rapidly without standard public debate, and then acceptance of loss of liberty for security. Under extreme stress, populations willingly trade fundamental liberties such as financial privacy, unhindered consumption, and bodily autonomy regarding resource access. And we can give an example of that. Let's give an example of that. All right, let's go to the BLB again, and let's go to Genesis, all right, chapter 47. Brother should know exactly where I'm going. All right, this is Genesis chapter 47. Let me get to the point. All right, is it 47? Okay, here we go. Genesis 47, verse 15 says, and when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all Egyptians came unto Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. And Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you for cattle, and give your cattle, and I will give you for cattle if money fail. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses, and for the flocks, and for the cattle of herds, and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. When that year was ended, they came unto him the second year and said unto him, we will not hide it from you, my lord, or that all our money is spent. My lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left inside of my lord but our bodies and our land. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. Right? So this is showing you that in extreme scenarios, right, people will accept, loss of liberty, and other things that they would not normally accept under normal circumstances. Let's get Nehemiah chapter 5, right? It says, and there was a great cry of the people and of their wives against their brethren, the Jews. For there were that said, we, our sons and our daughters are many, therefore we take up corn for them that we may eat and live. Some also there were that said, we have mortgaged our land, right? Vineyard and houses that we may buy corn because of the dearth, another name for famine. There were also that said, we have borrowed money for the king's tribute, and that upon our lands and vineyards. Yet now our flesh is as the flesh of our brethren, our children as their children, and lo, we bring into bondage our daughters to be servants, and some of our daughters are brought into bondage already. Neither is it in our power to redeem them, for other men have our lands and vineyards. So they sold themselves into captivity because of the lack of resources. So, right? So that's what it says here, manufactured consent to emergency. When taps are running dry, right, and cities are facing day zero scenarios, the psychological framing shifts from do you want government tracking and rationing to do you want water or do you want to die of thirst, right? So, under extreme stress, populations willingly trade fundamental liberties such as financial privacy, unhindered consumption, and bodily autonomy regarding resource access in exchange for guaranteed survival and systemic order, right? And that's what the elites are planning to use, this problem reaction solution system, right? But this also ties into the sustainable development goals, right? Institutional justification. International planners utilize frameworks like Sustainable Development Goal 6, which goes into clean water and sanitation, Sustainable Development Goals 13, which is climate action, and number 17, which is partnership, to promote digital resource tracking. The core tension. So this is what's coming, and this is the system that the system that they're using to bring it. So we can't be ignorant of this. This is Lamentation 5 and verse 4. It says, we have drunken our water for money, our wood is sold unto us. And it's not gonna be no way to pay a water bill, right? Your very usage down to the drop is gonna be rationed, right? As it says here in Ezekiel chapter 4 and verse 16, it says, moreover, he said unto me, son of man, behold, I will break the staff of bread in Jerusalem. They shall eat bread by weight, and with care they shall drink water by measure and with astonishment, right? That they may want bread and water and be astonished with one another and consume away for their iniquity. Let's read that in the NLT, verse 16. Then he told me, son of man, I will make food very scarce in Jerusalem. It will be weighed out with great care and eaten fearfully. The water will be rationed out drop by drop, and the people will drink it with dismay, right? That's what tokenization of water is going to be, right? The digital rationing of water, drop by drop, right? Micah chapter 2, verse 1, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds when the morning is light. They practice it because is it in the power of their hand. They covet fields, they take them by violence, houses take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. So when when we talk about the mark of the beast system that's coming, it's not just, as the Apostle Tahar says, it's not just the chip that's going in your hand. It's a whole digital framework, digital system that is being built around you to control your very movement, the things that you consume, and how much of it you consume. Right? It's a godlike system, that Esau is trying to build. So hopefully this lesson was edifying. Until next time, shalom.